Good evening, one and all, and welcome to another edition of the Wellness Corner. And I just want to say welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you had a good day today. And as usual, if you didn't have a good day, at the end of the show, your day is going to get better. So stick around until 8 in the evening because we promise that we're going to have a show full of information that is going to be useful to you in terms of your health and wellness. My name is Jerry Simon. As usual, I have my good buddy here, Dwayne, with me. And in the studio this evening, we have, let me get this right, Solange. Solange, what's your last name again? It sounds bad, right? Solange Baptist, who is the manager of promotional services. Informational services. You see, when you don't have paper, how will it happen? And when your brain gets old, what happens? Manager of informational services at the Antigua and Barbuda Bureau of Standards. And we have, this is bad, I'm really striking out this afternoon. Well, let me ask the guest to introduce herself. The other guest, let's take the mic.
Okay, I'm Kelvin Spencer, and I am a microbiologist at the Department of Analytical Services.
So hear it for yourself. Kelvin Spencer, microbiologist at the Department of Analytical Services of Antigua and Barbuda. So this evening we're gonna look at that in this section of the program, or when the time comes, we're gonna look at food safety, especially looking at foodborne diseases, how we can prevent. So we always talk about prevention here, and a little bit of treatment, but really and truly we're looking at prevention, which is the main focus. So right off the bat, Mrs. Baptist, just tell us what is food safety and what does the Bureau of Standards do in terms of ensuring food safety?
Well, I'm not sure if I can necessarily bring the technical definition of food safety.
It's okay. We can bring the technical.
But
We
of course,
can always break it down.
What we're talking about is the production, handling, and service and consumption of food that is free of harmful pathogens or bacteria, and the methodologies that go into preventing foodborne illness, through standards, guidelines, codes of practice, the whole gamut of provisions and procedures that can keep food safe for consumption, thus promoting better health. I would want Ms. Spencer maybe to take a stab at that if she can, improve on it. Definitely.
Okay, how I would define food safety is ensuring that food is safe from farm to table, because it starts from from the farm, the producers, all the way to the food chain to when it comes to the consumers at the table.
So from production until I lick my fingers.
Yes.
and beyond.
And exactly. And we want to make sure, like she mentioned, it is free of pathogens, free of contaminations, because some of these pathogens, if they increase in numbers, it could lead to you being hospitalized, and in extreme cases it
can lead to death. Very
right.
much so. So hold it thought there for me. I think we have Dr. Richardson on the line now. Dr. Richardson, are you here with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Good evening. How are you doing? So we are just speaking to Dr. Claudine Richardson from Mount St. John's Celeste Bird Medical Center. And after the break, we're going to come back and we'll be speaking to Ms. Kelvin Spencer, microbiologist in the Department of Analytical Services, and Mrs. Solange Baptist, Manager, Information Services of Antigua and Barbuda Bureau of Standards. And we'll be talking about the whole aspect of food safety. How do you store food? How do you prepare food? How do you store food? How do you grow food? All aspects of food safety, the diseases that can come from food, whether it be bacterial, whether it be fungus, parasites, and even from the medical point of view, how do you treat a person once they have had food poisoning or any food-related illness? So we can do that when we come back on the Wellness Corner on WTP FM. Welcome back to WTP FM and welcome back to the Wellness Corner. This evening we're looking at the topic of food safety As you know, and if you don't know, you're going to know now. Yesterday, June 7th, was World Food Safety Day. And as a result, we have two people involved in different capacities in terms of food safety here in Antigua and Barbuda. Ms. Kelvin Spencer, microbiologist, Department of Analytical Services, and Mrs. Solange Baptist, Manager of Information Services of the Antigua and Barbuda Bureau of Standards. And they're going to be speaking to us on the whole topic of how we can keep our food safe so we can prevent food-borne diseases. So we have started a little bit in terms of defining what is food safety. And for those who joined us earlier, you will get the idea that food safety just entails the different ways in which we keep food safe from the time you start production of food, that is, you're planting, even in your planting phase, come right up to the time, like I said, you lick your fingers and even beyond. So back to you, Mrs. Baptist. What does the Bureau of Standards do, or what is the role of the Bureau of Standards in terms of ensuring food safety here in Antigua and Barbuda?
Okay, so the name of the organization, the Antigua and Barbuda Bureau of Standards, gives away some of our mandate in terms of food safety, which is the standards aspect. So because of our standards development and promotion, and one of our big words, promulgation mandate, standards and quality, I should say, the Bureau is also the national codex contact point. And when we hear the term codex, we think about a joint initiative between the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN and the World Health Organization for the development of international standards, codes of practice, and guidelines that govern food safety, and fair trade in food.
Very good.
All around the world. So we represent, we're the national representative of that body.
Very
and
good.
so we are in place to collaborate with our agricultural agencies and our health agencies to promote standards for food safety.
There's a term I often hear used, Codex Alimentarius. What does that mean?
So that's a little Latin lesson today. The Codex Alimentarius is the Latin for food code.
Uh-huh.
And so basically, that is what it is. It's a body of publications, specifications, codes of practice, as I mentioned before, and guidelines that govern food safety,
Very good.
and trade in food.
So Dwayne, next time you go to a restaurant and just ask the people if they're following the Codex Alimentarius, okay? And if they don't know what you're talking about, tell them you're not eating there, okay?
Oh my. Wow. The
So-
pressure.
Well, yeah, we have to keep it real. So, Miss Spencer, in terms of you being a microbiologist, what is your role at the Department of Analytical Services in terms of food safety?
Okay, so first I would like to say exactly what we do at the lab. So
Very good.
so the main things that we do, the main service we offer is water and food testing. And so my main role is on the microbiology side, and so we look for contamination in water and food. Okay, so we would do, well, in order to do that, we'll use what we call culture media. We need to grow the bacteria in the lab. And then if we do find a bacteria, we would say, okay, well, your food or water is contaminated. And so you need to do something to treat it. In the case of the food, can't eat it, you'd have to do an investigation. We'd have to report to CBH so they can do an investigation. And so that, they'll have to review the business's procedures or whatever. And in terms of the water, they'll have to treat it. So my main job really is to test the food and water to ensure they're free from contamination.
So what are you finding? Are you finding that the food is generally safe? Is it not safe?
So we want to
Can it be safer? Is it at a good standard? What are you finding when you do your analytical services up at Dunbar? It is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What are you finding?
So before I answer that, I would like to say that we are offering a services and the client is all confidential, right? So I can't say, okay, well,
No,
this
no,
particular
I would
business
not. I would not ask you to
But-
name any names in terms of people, but in terms of the food that's coming in, what are we finding?
So I actually did a research project as part of my master's just last year, and what I found, I chose 4 businesses, and when I combined over the years, what I found that only a little under 40% actually adhered to food standards. Okay, now
Where's the 40% of the businesses or 40% of the
well, of the
standards?
food that we tested from the businesses, only about 40% adhere to standards and were prepared in a hygienic.
So is that good? That sounds some good to me, Dwayne, does it?
Well, no.
Does it to you?
Room
Anyway, Ms. Spencer, explain to me because I'm not happy
well,
to hear
no,
that.
well,
room for improvement.
well. So if you look in the research further, it was mainly from one food business
Okay.
where a lot of the food were failing, right? And when you look at it even further, the kind of food that was failing, it was food that was cooked with food that was not cooked. So it was, for example, maybe rice and peas and salad.
Oh.
Okay, so yes, you're gonna
So you
find
cook the rice and peas and salad, of course, is
and
raw.
then so it was more like a meal, and so the fully cooked food occasionally would fail, but most of the time they were fine. But the majority of the food with the rice and the salad were failing. So what I would suggest, well, that means first of all that when they're preparing the food, after they prepare it, the handling of the food after preparation, that needs to be addressed. And since a lot of the salads were coming very high with the kind of bacteria finding, I was thinking that wherever they get in their salads or their raw food, their lettuce from, they may not be practicing good agriculture practices.
What
Okay,
bacteria you're finding though, or microorganism?
Okay, so first off, we want finding the major pathogens, which would have been salmonella and another called listeria. We want finding those.
Because I know sometimes when lettuce comes in from the States, or quite often in the States, you find there's salmonella outbreak.
Yes.
We're not finding that in
or
Antigua, though. Or
E.
E.
coli
coli.
outbreaks.
Are we finding that in Antigua on a regular basis in terms of salmonella? At least,
No.
at least I'm not hearing of those outbreaks in Antigua as much as I hear in the States.
No.
Okay.
But it's very hard to track outbreaks here. Okay, so as far as I'm aware, in terms of the lab, we have never detected salmonella or listeria.
This is the thing with salmonella, though, and again, maybe from the analytical standpoint, biological evidence, it might be hard to track, let's say, salmonella, listeria, things like that. But definitely, when there's a salmonella outbreak, clinically, it will show.
Yes.
Because of the symptoms with salmonella, once it festers, so to speak, you will see it.
Right. But I will say this: there were a few years ago, there was a salmonella. There was some Brazilian chicken
I
that
remember.
that they were imported, and then they said that they had an outbreak, and so some of the chicken we had to test at the lab during that time, and we did find salmonella. So when I say we didn't find salmonella, I'm talking about food that were prepared.
Yeah, understand.
Yes.
Understood.
Okay, so
Thanks.
yeah. So mainly with that, we were finding some occasionally E. coli and another group of bacteria that we call coliforms. Now, coliforms, when we find it, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to make you sick. What that means is that if you're finding high numbers of coliform, chances are that the food is being prepared in unhygienic conditions. Okay, so it's mainly used as an indicator. Okay, so with that particular establishment, coliforms was appearing a lot and in high numbers.
And coliforms are bacteria that inhabit the gut, right?
Yes.
The whole digestive system.
Yes.
Yeah.
The gastrointestinal tract.
Very good.
Yes.
Just for the purpose of our audience.
Yes.
Very good.
If I may, forgive me, but I'm going to also serve as part of the audience here.
No problem.
Because
we have questions for you as well. So
one of
don't think you're getting away.
the things that I'm wondering about is we need to break down some of these technical terms, please.
Yeah, we're gonna do that. Not to worry.
So
Not to
that
worry.
because we're hearing the E. coli, we're hearing the salmonella coliforms. Oh yes, and I'm thinking 101. Yes.
Okay,
So-
My apologies.
okay, for the
We need
purpose
to-
of our audience,
we
it's
need to
okay.
break these
It's okay.
down.
We're gonna break it down. When
So
you talk
that-
about things like coliforms and E. coli and salmonella and Shigella and Vibrio cholera, These are different
Yeah.
forms of bacteria that can
Big
infect
words.
our food in different way. It could be by the not washing our hands properly. For example, you
Right.
use the toilet and don't wash your hands properly.
Right. Handling pets.
Handling pets and then handling your food.
Pets carry.
Playing in dirt and not washing your hands and handling your food.
Mm-hmm.
Shaking everybody's hand and then handling your food. Or the food could be prepared badly in terms of the temperature, in terms of
Temperature
the...
abuse.
And this way I want the Bureau of Standards specialist here, Ms. Solange Baptist, to talk us through that as well. But in terms of the food, the temperature, so having proper thermometers that are measuring your food and make sure your food stays at the right temperature.
And that's
Cold being cold, hot being hot, warm being warm, those kind of things.
And that's very important in the food business.
Yeah.
Okay, so ideally, each food business should be following what we call HACCP. Okay, hazard.
So what is HACCP? Tell us.
analysis.
Let's break down HACCP for us.
Critical control points.
What's that again?
Hazard analysis, critical control.
Hazard analysis, physical control points.
Critical control points.
So,
control.
So basically,
Hazard analysis, critical control points.
yes.
Very
So
good.
let's say you have a food business, you should be able to identify each point where contamination could occur, and then you should be able to know what you should be able to know. Okay, I should make sure that the temperature should be at this point, so that bacteria does not contaminate and
Very
fester.
good. So let's walk us through this then. And I'm sure I'm going to have to bring you ladies back in at some other point in time because there's a lot of questions that are rolling in my head right now. So walk me through that now. Let's say Dwayne and I decide to start a ITEL food business. Because Dwayne loves ITEL, I love ITEL.
That
Okay.
was good.
And we open this ITEL food business. What are some of the points that we have to look at? Are these critical points that we have to look at to prevent or to enhance food safety, to ensure food safety? Starting from the production, coming right up through the delivery of the food. When it's a delivered food, putting on the table for someone to eat. What are these little points that we have to look for?
Where are you getting the food from?
So first of all, where we getting the food
Yeah,
from?
you need to know exactly
Your
where you're getting the
raw-
food,
your
your
raw-
raw food. And ITEL, they specialize a lot with
Natural.
vegetables.
Foods and
Yes,
yeah.
vegetables.
So
you have
Dwayne
to
and
make
I
sure
are
that where
planting
you're
our
getting
own
the
food.
food. Yeah, where they're getting the food. Are they practicing good agriculture practice? Are they using treated water? Well, not treated water, but
Water that's safe.
Yeah, water that's safe when they're watering their plants.
So the water should not be contaminated with, let's say, feces, human feces.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Definitely
Because
not.
sometimes you can use treated sewage as effluent.
But it has to be treated.
Yeah, but then you have to make sure when we use standards, they are free from bacteria.
Very good.
Right? Because, again, you'll be eating these raw sometimes.
Very good.
Right? So once you identify that when you're going along the chain, when you're preparing the food, you have to make sure that you are separating the food. If you're storing the food, make sure that the temperature you're storing at the food is appropriate. When you're
So
cooking the
before
food,
we get there, so we produce this
Slow it
food.
down.
They cook this food.
yes.
We plant this food.
Mhm.
So let's say we dig up our potatoes and things like that. When I dig my potatoes from the ground and I have them in my hands, okay, and packing them in my bags to take to the market, is there anything I have to do to ensure food safety at that point after I dig up my potatoes from the ground? Do I have to wash them before I deliver them to the market?
How you store the food as
And do I have to,
well.
and do I have to
And-
store it in a particular way as well?
Yes, I can't say exactly how.
Not
'cause
necessarily just for
that's-
potatoes,
yeah,
but I
that's-
mean any sort of food that I have to dig out the ground are gonna have dirt in it.
Yes, but all that falls under good agriculture practices.
Very good.
Yes. So I cannot really speak really on that because that's mainly with extension officers because they are the ones that deal with farmers.
But suffice it to
So-
say, if we not practicing at that stage, if we're doing something wrong at that stage, up the chain now we're gonna have problems.
Very
Very
much
good.
so. Very much so. And again,
Definitely.
similarly, there are some foods that you eat raw,
Very good.
like lettuce.
So let's say now we deliver our food to the market now. I go down public market, St. John's Market.
Mhm.
And so let's say my food is out, my vegetable is out in the sun, let's say a whole day. You know, is there any danger with that? You know, I know most likely it will be safe for a long
Yeah,
period of time, but let's
not-
say I bring back that same food maybe 3 days, 4 days, and then it start to get soft, start to get pudgy.
I believe it's more of an issue if it was heavily contaminated when it was when they
Being
got
cultivated.
being
Cultivated.
cultivated. If it was
Yes.
heavily contaminated,
And maybe not
'cause
stored
when
properly as well.
yes.
Well, and also to if I might jump in
no
here,
problem.
the whole issue of what you're adding to it. You spoke about the safety of the water, for example, that you use.
So the pesticides as well might be a problem too.
Yes, the water that you use to actually grow your produce, and of course, if you're adding any pesticides and so on to it, how that is administered, and to make sure you have the correct timing for your harvesting and so on.
Very good. So let's say, for example, let's say, sometimes when I come from a farming background. My father was a fisherman and farmer. So that's my kind of family line. So I know sometimes we just have a room where we store our produce before we take them to the market. Do we have to ensure that rats and roaches and those little creatures
Absolutely.
and not necessarily crawling up and down our food, maybe pissing, that's the word we can say on
want
radio,
to say you're
pissing
better.
and excreting on our food?
Absolutely. I'm not sure. You really know that rodents, especially rats, they carry leptospirosis. And I actually know of someone who got leptospirosis.
And let me just say for the audience, leptospirosis, but my audience know, especially those that listen
Well,
often,
it's
they know that leptospirosis is a dangerous disease
Very
that can kill.
Yes.
So we have to be
And
mindful of
kidney
that.
failure, you can have
Can
kidney
cause
failure.
kidney failure, yes.
Yes. So when you have storage, and especially with raw goods like that, you have to make sure that there's no rats, rodents, roaches, because they carry bacteria, and then they're living, as you said, they're defecating and urine, and all those can stay there, and then who knows how long before somebody buys the food and they have it there, and we don't, I guess they might be eating it raw. So yes, it really starts all the way from when you pick the food, cultivate the food, farm the food, all through
the process.
Yes.
I'm going to go back to you in a while, Ms. Spencer, but I'm going over to Mrs. Baptist now. In terms of the work of Bureau of Standards, because you do know that a lot of the foods that we eat in Antigua is imported.
Yes.
So how does the Bureau of Standards ensure, as much as possible, in terms of ensuring that the food that comes in here is of a quality that is, a standard quality that we should be consuming?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that question by laying out some of the promotional aspects of why we're here. Now, with regard to food safety and the whole World Food Safety Day campaign to date, the slogan is food safety, everyone's business. And that speaks generally and very strongly to the whole collaborative effort. So when we speak about what the Bureau of Standards does, we're talking about our role in supporting and promoting that collaborative effort, right? So the Bureau of Standards, as the name of the organization suggests, is involved in the matters of developing standards and specifications that promote food safety and, of course, quality, because quality is an important aspect of safety, food safety in this regard. We work along, as I mentioned, with many of the agriculture agencies, health agencies, to develop and promote standards that are relevant to Antigua and Barbuda's economic needs and the use of that.
So do they
One
import
of the one of those standards is our labeling standard.
Very good. I was getting to that.
Right, and the labeling, the labels on our products will tell us, or should at very least give us the ingredients, for example, in some cases quantities when you look at nutritional labeling, and so it should give us a fair idea of what is in the foods that we want to use. The other important, very important aspect of the label is something called date marking. Date marking. So that can be presented depending on the type of food. You might have a purchase by, you might have a use by date, a purchase by date, a use by date, a best before date, and you will also know about expiry dates. Now, some persons think that everything is an expiry date. Not quite, but if that is how you keep it safe for you, I would say go with it. right? So we know normally expiry dates,
Mm.
you do not use the product if it has reached its expiry date.
So I buy a product. Today's what, the 8th of June,
The 8th of June,
and it
yes.
says 8th of June. I can
Mhm.
use it on that date, or is up to the 7th of June.
That's very technical.
It's just a question.
Sometimes-
It's just a question I
sometimes-
always have when it comes to expiry date.
Well,
Should I use it?
if it's going to be that precise, I would want to believe that by the 7th of June you should use your product,
Okay.
not on the 8th
And
of
on
June.
the 8th.
However, I think
Definitely don't pass
if I
the
were
8th.
if I were to speak to my own comfort zone,
Don't pass the 8th.
I watch the month.
Okay. Or the month. Okay.
So if it's saying June,
Mm.
I don't
Because
think I'll
most
be tempted
often
to
though,
use
with
it.
most products, well, not necessarily most products, but with a lot of products, they actually give you a month
Yeah.
Right.
They
instead
give
of
a month.
instead of a specific
of
date.
a
Yeah.
specific date.
But I know things like yogurt and stuff
Yeah,
like that
they
that
can
are,
be
Specific.
more specific.
they tend to be more specific.
Because
Right.
they actually have
A shelf life. yeah.
bacteria.
You know,
in-
one of the I should say give and takes that we
Mhm.
would have to be careful with, of
Mhm.
course, is that I believe when these expiry dates are set,
Mm.
something that would be good to explore, you know, on a public education basis
Mhm.
is when an expiry date is set or how an expiry date is set in terms of what are the considerations for the actual
Setting an expiry
storage
date. Mm.
storage and handling of the item
Wow.
within the parameters of that date, right?
And
So
what you,
I have and why I'm saying that
Mhm.
I have had the experience of using a product within a use by date,
Mhm.
but then for some reason it had already the aesthetics
Mhm.
of the product had
Started to
already
change.
started to change or deteriorate. So
Mhm.
suffice to say, it's like your packet of cookies. It has a use by date that has not yet been reached, but then it's already, as we would say, going dumb.
Mhm.
You know, it's kind of soft. It's lost its crisp. It's tasting slightly funky. You know,
Mhm.
it does. It just
Mhm.
doesn't. The aesthetics are off. It doesn't it means it's harmful to you. It just is not of its optimum aesthetic quality,
Very good.
right? So there are different things to be considered, and what I would say is, for our consumers, take note of your labels. Take the time to look at them, even for products that you're accustomed to use and you use often. Take some time out to educate yourself as to what exactly is on it. You might actually see something that is necessary for you to take note of at that time and to act on, if even though you may not have noticed it before, and to also seek out the information. Now I will put a plug in here for our Central Board of Health, which is the competent authority for food safety in Antigua and Barbuda. So we are encouraging, within the whole drive for food safety, we are encouraging persons to acquaint themselves much more with our health inspectors, the Central Board of Health personnel, and the information that they provide for, on food safety tips, etc. And so that persons can know that this is a body that you can refer to become more educated, to become more aware of what we need to know, especially on the home and individual level, because that is often where the rubber hit the road. That is often where we have the final consumption, as you said, the right down to licking your fingers and beyond. So I think it's very important that we are conscious of those things that we should know about, and that we take the time, make the time to actually find out and take note of these things.
You see, one of the reasons why I asked that question, because sometimes when we get something in a nice package,
Uh-huh.
especially if it's from the United States or Europe or even a fellow Caribbean country, we tend to think it's all well and good.
Mhm.
And I remember Dr. Linroy Christian saying that when he did some testing at Dunbar's at the Analytical Services, he found that the local jelly water that the guys sell on the side of the road was much more safer,
Mhm.
or much more safe, that's the word,
Yes.
than those that came in from, let's say, Trinidad and stuff that come in these nice cans and bottles and were in our supermarkets. Because coconut water is something that we know is nutritious, and as something that's nutritious actually grows bacteria as well too because of the nutrients in it. The food.
But it's one of those things that are, I think, God put on this earth to be used fresh.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think so too. I think so. I think coconut
Fresh.
water should be used
They-
fresh.
I've been in other Caribbean territories where they bottle the coconut water, but the date marking on that is used within
Yes.
like 2 or
Yeah,
I
2 or 3
I think
days.
it's 2 or 3 days.
Yes, it's very
No more
short.
than 3 days.
I think just
So-
coconut water, when you cut it, you drink it.
I mean, sometimes I
That-
remember there was one brand of coconut water they had, and after even like 2 days, when you look at the coconut water, it started to turn red.
Yeah.
And I remember we
What is
tested
that?
it, and we actually saw the bacteria
Wow.
that was red.
Yeah, Dr. Christian was saying that, which
Yeah,
brought me back to
I
the point
remember when we did our
that Miss
testing.
Baptist was making, where
Wow.
when you set a date for an expiry date or use by date, what are the processes that you expect are going to happen to that product from time you put the date on till the expiry date? Because let's say you expect it to be stored in, I don't know, 4 degrees Celsius,
Right.
Celsius temperature
Right.
for the time period.
Right.
But then what happens when I take my sip of coconut water from the fridge, leave it on my kitchen counter
Uh-huh.
for maybe 2-3 minutes before I put it back into the fridge and things like that?
What's
Then
happening?
in the whole process, something might happen that the manufacturers did not anticipate.
Right.
Okay?
right.
So again, I think the point you're making is very essential, and we have to be very careful and mindful that even though there's an expiry date, what we often do sometimes, or often don't do, sometimes we don't follow the storage instructions
Exactly.
and even the prep instructions.
Yes, and that is also definitely a very important aspect of the label. So, you know, we take labels for granted. We say, oh, go and get the one with the blue label or the one with the green label. And, you know,
And we don't really read the label.
we don't even
We
really
just
know.
look for the sign that we want, like the one with the rooster head or something,
It's something.
as opposed to what it really says. So sometimes we don't even know that something that we're allergic to might be in that product because we don't necessarily read the label. So that's a very important point,
So,
I think.
so something
So-
like that. Personal responsibility is extremely important.
Extremely important
Extremely important.
indeed.
So back to you, Ms. Spencer. We are along the process now. We had got our stuff to the market. We bought it from the market. Is there anything I have to look for when I buy something from the market? Let's say our local markets here, as opposed to maybe just the supermarkets where we have labels and we're reading labels. But if I go to buy something at the market, is there anything I need to look for in terms of food safety? The color of the food, if there's any
Yes, the
blotches, I don't know. What
Yeah,
what
well,
we're looking for?
Yes, the aesthetics are important, but I think mainly is how the food is being stored. How are they being displayed?
Okay.
Okay, because it depends on what it is. Maybe it's in the sun, and you will not know how long they've been there. So it's really how they're being stored. I think
Especially
that's the
things like
main-
fish.
Oh,
If you're selling fish and you have it just laid out.
I can even mention. I don't even know if I can say this.
So we
But,
need a whole
I
we need a whole new
remember-
topic for fish.
I remember someone explained to me about watermelon.
Yes, yes.
Yes, not how they display the watermelon.
Oh dear.
I remember seeing lobster being outside and in the hot sun.
hot sun,
Yes,
yeah.
there and lobster in a
I've
particular
wondered often
area.
about the cockle. You know,
That's-
these guys are the
Like
side of
cockles
the road
and
selling
wilks and so.
cockle,
Yes.
and they're just holding up this bag.
Yeah,
and
but
they're
the-
driving
yeah.
by
In the
And
hot
these
sun.
hot
Yeah.
sun.
I know sometimes some of the
And
guys have it in the
eggs.
cooler, but I can imagine sometimes not always that
The
way.
package that they're holding out to advertise to say this is what we're selling here.
Well, I hope they're not selling that
I'm
package.
wondering who gets that one.
Well, I hope they're not
Okay,
selling that package.
so
But if they're selling it in the coolers and they're kept cold, that
yes,
should
well that
be
is definitely preferred.
yes.
Mhm.
Another, but I have heard persons talking about this, but eggs, the way how
But the
Yeah,
storage
that's-
of eggs is always important. Again,
yes,
there's some
exactly.
debate
Yes,
I
the
hear
eggs
in
are
terms
a
of
sore point.
refrigeration, not
Yes.
refrigeration, but again, we should be following the stipulated guidelines, at least that we know. One of the problems I have, even
Can I stick a pin just
Sure.
before you go on? guidelines that we know within our Antigua and
Well,
Barbuda
when I say
context.
guidelines that we know, guidelines that are known. When I say guidelines that are known, this is what I mean. um,
Mm.
let's say, for the want of a better word, that there might be a there might be different schools of thought in storing something like eggs, for example, because some people say you have to store them in the fridge. I've heard that you don't have to as well, but the prevailing guideline that I know is that you store eggs on the fridge. Okay, so I would say, hey, let's err on that side for now,
On the
until we
side
get
of caution.
definitive. If we get definitive word from someone else to say that, hey, it's not necessary, and this is then published scientifically and vetted and peer reviewed, then we can say, here, let's follow that new guideline. But I'm saying guideline that we know, because we're not going to know everything. Times things change. Sometimes guidelines change over time because we learn more. But I just want us to at least follow what we know, because quite often, even what we know, we don't even follow, and that's a dangerous practice as well.
If I could make a plug in here for at least just with some food for thought. On
Speaking of
that
food.
particular, yes, all puns intended. um, on that particular point about the correct temperature that eggs should be stored, I remember years ago, and this was something also that Director of Department of Analytical Services, Dr. Linroy Christian, had also informed on, is the fact that well, at least one other person that I know that has studied this whole area of food safety, is that some of the literature out there, again, and this is why I made that emphasis on our Antiguan and Barbudan context.
Yeah, sure.
Some of the literature that is out there might be applicable to more temperate climates, right? Cooler climates, where you pick something up from the farm. They can have it in a truck all day because the place is generally
The place is
cold,
cold, like
as we
Iceland
would say.
Yes.
and Greenland and Alaska.
Maybe not even to the point of freezing, but
Very cold.
you know,
Even places
it-
that experience cold temperatures.
right,
Yeah.
cold
throughout the
temperatures,
year.
right? So, but then we think that we hear ambient temperatures, and you don't need to put it in a chiller and so on. But the place itself that is providing this information is contextually a chilled place in itself.
So Sonji goes back to what you were saying earlier then, in terms of the expiry date on these things. Again, what is expected of the manufacturer.
And the
Because-
context.
Because again, and context, because if it's North America in winter, wherever the temperature is winter, so it's not going to be cold as hot as Antigua that always have summer. Okay?
Pretty much.
So pretty much. So again, that makes a lot of sense. So I really thank you for making that point, because I think that would end the debate for eggs for me. That if I'm in Antigua and I use eggs, I'm going to keep them in the fridge.
I
Because
mean-
eggs, like coconut water, have a lot of nutrients in it in terms of feeding bacteria.
Yes.
Right.
So if we play around with these things, we can get sick.
And if I might just plug in something, now we're hearing a lot about climate change. And we know that one of the major issues with climate change is rising temperatures, right? I don't know if anybody has noted it, but one of the things that I now listen for when we get our weather reports is the whole matter of heat index. That I know was not something that we were getting in our weather reports. I would say maybe, I would dare to say up to 10 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with you, yes.
We are now having to hear about heat index. We are now talking about the fact that the amount of dust in the air is giving you a feel like and temperature that is above the, if you want to say, the actual
Ambient
clinical temperature,
yes.
that is coming at us, So we have to be sensible and considerate of all the factors, or as many factors as we can, when we are considering all the things that work together to create the environment that we are within which we're trying to keep our food safe.
And on that note, we're going to take a break on the Wellness Corner. And when we come back, we're going to continue talking about food safety, how we can keep your food safe, how we can you stay healthy and happy right here on the Wellness Corner on WTP 93.5 or 93.7 FM.
WTP Radio.
Hi, this is Sly the Chief Rockin' J. Join me every morning, Monday to Friday from 7 o'clock on WTP FM 93.5. Your mornings will never sound like this again.
The I Love Music Show. The I Love Music Show with Radio Dave. Radio Dave.
Motown Monday, Tech Talk Tuesday, Tegan Thursdays. Those are some of my daily features on the I Love Music Show, Monday to Friday, midday to 2 p.m. with me, Radio Dave, on WTP 93.5 FM.
From Mondays to Fridays, 2 to 5, it's the Rhythm Therapy Show. Interviews, music, beat and teach. Beat out some old tunes, teach you some new tunes. Every day, Monday to Friday. DJ Who, Rhythm Therapy, WTP FM, turn up loud!
Hi there, I am DJ Governor Slim, inviting you to join me for the Nighttime Groove on WTP Radio from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. and on Saturdays from 2 until 7 for your weekend mashup, right here on WTP 93.5 FM.
WTP.
Welcome back to WTP FM and welcome back to the Wellness Corner. This evening we're looking at the whole aspect of food safety, how to keep your food safe. In the studio we have Miss Kelvin Spencer. She's a microbiologist at the Department of Analytical Services, and Mrs. Solange Baptist, Manager of Information Services at the Antigua and Barbuda Bureau of Standards. And we're just talking about the whole aspect of food safety, how we can keep our food safe to make sure that, hey, you're not getting sick from, the illnesses that food can bear, if that's the term. Mm-hmm. So back to you now, Miss Spencer. You're working in a laboratory as a microbiologist, and of course you see different microorganisms that we know can affect our bodies in a negative way. Maybe it might be difficult for you to maybe expand in terms of the numbers of people actually getting sick. But in terms of what you're seeing in the lab, do you suspect that there are things that we need to be doing better here in Antigua? I know you mentioned some time ago in terms of the numbers of what was being done, and that was one organization. Mm-hmm. But across the board, are there things that we can do better, maybe in terms of informing now the standards that we should be following, or the standards that we have so far are best standards, best practice?
I think we don't test every single food organization, but from what I've seen, occasionally there seems to be an issue with hygienic quality, the conditions they are preparing the food, and possibly the practices of the food handlers. That means that are these food handlers washing their hands properly? Do they understand the importance of personal hygiene? Are they keeping raw food separate from contaminated from cooked food? How are they handling the food after preparation?
For example, I saw something the other day, and maybe other people would have seen it, where there was a particular gentleman in a restaurant in the kitchen cooking the food without a shirt on. Now, I suspect that might not be an isolated case, and I don't know who the person was. I don't know the name of the restaurant. I don't necessarily want to know.
Vexing.
I've seen a lot of
That
videos.
is vexing to say the least.
And I guess maybe the Bureau of Standards and food inspectors, maybe even more than Bureau of Standards would know. But I'm just wondering, and maybe a difficult question for anyone here to answer, but I'm just wondering how widespread that these practices might be, that people are not practicing the proper hygienic aspects of food handling when they're in a restaurant where maybe the public cannot see them. And this we're going to ask Mrs. Baptist on Bureau of Standards. I know that Bureau of Standards is one of the body that does the food handling certificate education and training.
Yeah.
How's that going? Are we finding, because we see a lot of people in Antigua providing food, are the numbers computed in terms of those who are coming in to get the training when you match it with those that are actually providing food in the way that they should be having the food handler certificate?
This would be definitely be a question for the Central Board of Health.
Okay.
The Central Board of Health, as the competent authority, they do the bulk of the training. They would have a handle as to how many persons they train on an annual basis. So we wouldn't have those statistics, unfortunately. What I would want to say, however, and again putting a plug for them, I hope I won't get beaten down for this, but I would encourage persons to avail themselves of the training that is provided by the Central Board of Health personnel. Now, we know about the actual training sessions, food handlers, certification sessions that they have, but I would say if you are from a community group, a church group, whatever, invite them to train en masse. Whether it is your whole church community or your whole organization, get that training en masse, because you cannot. It's better that you hear this information 4 times a year than you don't hear it, because it makes a difference even for serving a cup of water, a glass of juice.
Wow.
It makes a difference how you handle yourself, how you handle your service environment, how you actually present this item to somebody who's going to consume it.
So let's say I go to the food fair next Independence Day, and I go up to someone who's selling, not necessarily popcorn, because, well, maybe even popcorn, but let's say they're selling something that they're preparing. Let's say they're cooking fungi and pepper pot. Can I, or should I, should demand, well, maybe demand is not the word, but they recommend that they present to me their food handler certificate?
You can ask, of
Yes,
course.
yes, you should
It
be.
is in your right as a
ask.
consumer to make that
Yeah.
request, because they are actually, I think, supposed to
They're
have
supposed
it, and
to,
they're supposed
yes.
to have
They're supposed to.
their certificate displayed
Yeah.
in some instances. That might be more food establishments, but you are in your right as a consumer to request that proof of your certification to be handling and serving.
And when people cooking cooking food on the spot, again, they say like the food fair, should they be having like some water that they can wash their hands, or
Absolutely.
water?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And one of the
definitely.
things sometimes that persons would think, you know what, let me use hand sanitizer.
Oh.
Yes, and just that's enough. No,
Sanitizing the germs.
when you compare, this is actually because I actually teach at I teach microbiology, and we always do this experiment where we compare how effective hand sanitizers are compared to washing your hands.
And that's something you have tested in your
Yes,
lab?
many
and-
times
wow.
every year when I do the course, and every time hand washing effectively reduces the amount of bacteria on your hands. So if you have the choice, I'd say that using the hand sanitizer when you do not have any access to water.
It's like a last resort.
Yes, but you always want to use water, soap, and water and soap, and just wash your hands.
Because sometimes I might go see a patient and I might have to work on, let's say, a sore or something like that. And then afterwards, the person's gonna offer me food, offer me something to eat, have my hand sanitizer. But I usually refuse in the moment. I say, okay, when I come back another time, because I'm very funny when it comes to eating during work, because hands away, food gets contaminated a lot.
That's the main way. That's the main.
And I'm always, and if I don't have running water where I can scrub my hands with soap and water. Because for me, hand sanitizer dries out my hand, and I think sometimes it makes your hand even vulnerable to bacteria because of the drying of the skin.
Right.
It makes it vulnerable to certain bacteria.
And also, a lot of times we'll see, because some hand sanitizer market antimicrobial or antibacterial, okay, to kind of say, okay, this hand sanitizer works better than the other. But honestly, if you compare the two, you don't see much of a difference. So it's always best to choose water
proper hand washing.
soap. Yes, every time. No exceptions.
So we're going to get a little into the clinical aspect of things now.
Clinical.
Yes. Well, all of us going to share. We know, for example, that there are certain symptoms that go along with foodborne illnesses. For example, let's say that you get contaminated with salmonella or shigella, which is possible, especially with food. You might have, belly ache. Some cases you could have fever, sweating, diarrhea. In fact, when I was advertising the show, I was thinking about getting a little song when you're driving in your Chevy, but I mean, it might gross out some people.
when you're climbing up the tree.
Yeah.
It's running past your knee.
So diarrhea is one of these things.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that I often tell people, if you're sure what's wrong with you, that's okay. If you're sure. But most of the times we're not sure what's wrong with us. And not to make the doctors rich or whatever, but if you're not sure, especially when it comes to food and food poisoning, go seek medical help.
Yes.
Because some of the things that we see, for example, you have Vibrio cholera. I don't think cholera is coming in Antigua now because our source of water now might be different. But at a time when I knew back in the day, people used to get cholera, and there have been cholera outbreaks in the world that have killed, like pandemic levels where they've killed quite a lot of people. It means then, well, maybe not pandemic, but certainly in the areas where
like
they were,
Haiti
those kind of levels.
I know they had
Exactly.
an issue. Yeah.
It means then that we have to be so much careful when we see the different symptoms that are related to food issues. And I don't want people to take them for granted, because quite often we just say, well, it's wipe the food. And I do it sometimes. I'm going to be honest with you. When I go hiking and I see a nice mango, I'm not going to make that mango just waste. I will pick that mango, wipe it in my shirt. If I have some water that I'm not going to drink, because most of the times I don't drink water on the hike, I wait till the after. I might wash it with the water, but sometimes you just rub it in your shirt. But I'm still going to say, if you notice something is not right, don't wait until it's too late. Because quite often when food poison set in, you might be in the best hospital in the world and you still die. So I don't want us to take that for granted. Fish is something I don't want us to take for granted. As a son of a fisherman, when fish is not handled properly, it can be very dangerous. When meats are not handled properly, okay? When we mix meats with raw meat with fruits and vegetables or uncooked food, it can be another issue again.
It's a disaster.
So those are some of the things I want our audience to recognize, that don't play when it comes to the safety of your food.
Can I steal your role for a moment?
Sure, no, go right ahead, because I'm looking to
right.
get out the medicine. Hey,
So,
I hope my patient's
okay,
not
so
listening.
what I would like, and what I think would mean a lot, and I'm speaking even for myself as a consumer. Can you grab a simple example, break it down for us, or as to maybe a particular pathogen or toxin, and give us an idea of, okay, if we're dealing with this particular pathogen, what do you look for in terms of the adverse impact, and what kind of timelines are we working with in terms of the growth of the bacteria, the development of the symptoms and stuff like that.
Okay,
So
I'm going to turn it over to the microbiologist. However, as a physician, I'm just going to say this in general. I don't want, and the microbiologist can take it a step further, but I don't want our patients or my patients to get too carried away with the microorganism, because we're not going to know until it's
A lot of
analyzed.
them have very
Okay?
similar.
Yes,
Yeah, they have
What
similar
I would say,
symptoms.
if you find the general symptoms, okay, it might be vomiting, it might be fever in some cases, because there are very few bacteria that we'll find around here that cause food issues that we actually have to have antibiotics and things like that. Most of the times what you need is supportive care.
Yes.
Hydration is key.
Yes.
hydration.
Certain sides of poison, like say fish poison, you might need a steroid, but hydration is really key.
And what is
Okay.
the steroid for?
The steroids in terms of the toxin that you find in fish and some of
To
the other.
counter it?
Yeah, to counter
Okay.
it, so to speak.
Okay.
So, but hydration is really key. And hydration is simple as well too. If you're not vomiting, you can self-hydrate. That is, you can drink your fluids and whatever. Make sure you have a good balance of electrolytes. And on another program, we can teach exactly how we mix electrolytes and things like that. But hydration is key. If the patient is discompensating, then you make sure you get them to a hospital or a clinic that can handle.
What was that big word?
When I say discompensating, the person might the vomiting is not stopping. Okay, so they can't self-hydrate.
Okay.
So if you can't self-hydrate because you're vomiting so much, then you need to get to a hospital where you might need IV hydration.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I just want us to look at in general terms in terms of that, because from what I knew, through medicine, and I know in the United States when they come to the Caribbean, they always give you antibiotics, and they say if you eat a food and you start to feel sick, just take antibiotic. To me, that's foolishness. To me, it's important to follow the general guidelines of hydration and supportive care. You're breathing properly, you're hydrated. Because sometimes we can get carried away with these antibiotics, and in the long run, they're causing a lot of harm.
That's not good.
We know, for example, if you have Vibrio cholera, maybe Salmonella poisoning, Shigella, and Campylobacter, I think that's one of them as well, along with E. coli 153. I think those are the strains of bacteria that you want to treat with antibiotics.
Yes.
If, again, you don't know, let's say I'm a physician and the patient is sick enough in terms of they have fever with the food poisoning, and I can establish food poisoning, they have a high fever, they're sweating, the diarrhea is all over the place, then I might, before I get the result back, I might give an antibiotic as well. But I don't want necessarily to get carried away with antibiotic and with specific at this stage, because then we can say, oh, I don't have this, I don't have that, so I can, it's okay. I want us to take it in general that bacteria can be dangerous. Even a bacteria that might not be dangerous for you individually because of your immune system might be dangerous for me. So it's important to get the supportive care, the hydration. If you're vomiting, again, IV hydration might be necessary in that case. If you have diarrhea but not vomiting, check to see how much you're passing out and make sure you're filling in, putting back in.
The
Things like bananas that have potassium, those are good foods when you're dehydrated. The same coconut water that we talk about, make sure it's fresh. Things like those are what you should be doing. My good microbiologist here can maybe give us a little bit of the timeline and the question that you asked in terms of the specific organisms.
Well, each bacteria has a different incubation period, and after ingestion, when you'll start to see the symptoms. So, for example, with E. coli, it takes 1 to 3 days. For something like Staphylococcus, takes hours, and for something like Bacillus, takes 10 to 16 hours. But I was talking about Listeria, takes like weeks sometimes.
Wow.
Right. So it really varies. It varies depending on the bacteria, but you will start to see some of the symptoms, and as you were saying, it depends. If you see that it's very severe and it's really impacting your way of life, that's when you should seek medical attention. Some of these bacteria you can recover after a while from the symptoms, but others will definitely impact you. And then you have the really nasty ones like Listeria, where if you're pregnant, it can cause miscarriages as well as stillbirths.
What's some of the source of contamination in terms of Listeria?
Yeah, Listeria.
What would be the source of contamination?
That would be from soil and water and feces.
Okay.
But they are normally associated with cheese and cold cuts. Yes, and the main one is cold cuts. So when they're slicing
it's like a cold
meat,
turkey and your steak
whoever preparing in the business have to make sure that they follow strict sanitation procedures to always clean down, because Listeria, the thing about
machinery.
Yes, every time. And the thing about bacteria as well with those machineries, they can actually cause films. They can go in communities, and actually it would be very difficult to actually remove them from the machinery.
Wow.
So that's why you have to always try to set up a schedule to clean it every time. So with Listeria, you have to be careful. Same thing with raw lettuce. That's another source of outbreaks there. So yeah, it really just depends on the bacteria, and
So do we need now more classes, more public advert? Maybe sometimes instead of showing some of the foolishness we show on TV, forgive me for saying that, we maybe should have people that are involved in home economics, people who are involved in food preparation to come on TV and show us how to prepare our foods from a sanitation point of view.
Yes, absolutely.
Because sometimes I have the argument with my wife in the house. how to defrost chicken.
Ah.
Okay, something as simple as that. And I'm gonna really have to ask you guys to come back, maybe even with others, one of these days, so we can maybe dig a little deeper into this topic. But because this topic is so broad and wide and deep, that there's so many things that we don't talk about that we need to. But even something like that, how to defrost chicken, you know,
the fridge.
In the fridge. Yeah.
you see, and,
In
some,
the
and you try to tell some people that, and they will swear that you're telling them foolishness. Okay, but that's something that we need to have shown
Again,
on TV.
especially because our climate is
Because
so
our climate is so
hot
exactly.
right now. It is so hot. The best place is in a cool temperature where it can defrost slowly and be maintained at a safe temperature to avoid bacterial growth.
So I'm gonna really petition ABS to have some programs on TV where we can show people the correct way to defrost chicken, because plenty people in Antigua yam chicken. Okay, Dwayne and I don't decide we're gonna start a chicken and bread business.
Wait, what
Well,
happened to that
I thought I
ital?
was just
we all. Hey,
I thought
Well,
it was
look here,
about
look here.
ital.
Look here.
eat ital and stuff.
We talk ital chicken, okay?
Oh.
I mean, I eat
Oh,
ital.
hey, if you're a Rasta man, don't cuss me, okay? I'm just hey. But
Wow.
I'm just saying, you know.
Okay, maybe CBH.
I think I should quit while my head.
The Central
think
Board of Health
so.
would be more responsible
Yes,
in terms
our
of
Central Board
yeah.
of Health
Yeah, but we
personnel,
need, but you see,
I'm sure
Yeah.
would be.
but see,
Yeah,
the
they
media
don't
needs to
push
drive
it
it.
well.
We in the media needs to drive it, and that's why on
Maybe
this
they
program,
I know they haven't.
or on any program I do, I try to get away from the political talk and stuff, because we need to educate our people into doing things properly
And
in our country.
having healthy
You know,
living,
or children,
yeah,
or
health-
you know,
healthy
even when it comes to
lifestyles.
drug use and all these kind of things, because we get carried away with who's gonna say 28 grams of marijuana, who's gonna say 14 grams of marijuana, as opposed to educate our people what are the dangers of marijuana and what are the, if they're good uses of marijuana. Educate, because I think if you educate someone, then they can make proper decisions. But then we get carried away sometimes with the whole political mumble jumble and nobody learn nothing in the process. So I'm just saying, let's get these programs. The Bureau of Standards, I know, will have something to do with this as well. And Ms. Baptist's position as the manager of informational services, that's right up your alley. Let's get the people out there to educate our people so that we can learn to do the right thing, so we can learn to protect ourselves from a food safety point of view and other aspects of safety in our country.
Well, even as you said that, I will certainly commit to bring that to our Codex committee, to seeing that committee, and this is just again for information purposes, but the Bureau of Standards, the Standards Development Department, has a Codex committee. It's the National Codex Food and Agriculture Technical Committee, and this committee consists of representation from almost all, if not all, our agriculture agencies, including the Department of Analytical Services, as well as our Ministry of Health, the
Very
Central
good.
Board of Health.
Very good.
And so also a few private concerns, our consumer agency, and so definitely I will share your
And you have WTP at your disposal, okay?
noted.
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 Okay? You can comment any one of my programs, whether it be the health program or the other one. We are willing to have you, because I think this is important enough, because people still, one of my dear friends, my dearest friends, died of food poisoning, a nurse, some years ago.
Oh.
And she was in the hospital when she died. Okay?
Oh, I'm sorry. to
And
hear that.
when things like that happen, I'm very passionate about food safety. You know, even sometimes I see my children do certain things in the home, and they get on my nerves, so to speak, because I warn them about these kind of things. Because food can knock you down quickly. When you get food poisoning, it can knock you down quickly. Well, we're actually just about at the end of our time, so I'll give each you guys
Are you
1 minute to
serious?
just time flies when you're having fun, or even if you're not having fun, whichever way.
1 more hour?
So well, we can come back another day. Don't worry about it. So just give us your parting words for our audience.
Oh, I have so many.
It's
Wow.
okay. Let's go quickly. Dwayne will give us a few minutes.
Okay, well, I would just want to say, first of all, thank you
You're
for facilitating our World Food Safety Day promotion. And again, what I want to leave with our public and is definitely that whole issue of the personal responsibility. Now we're talking about food standards save lives, and yes, there are roles that our consumers can play in terms of developing and demanding certain standards. Nevertheless, we have to be our own police for ensuring that the standards are used and implemented, because it normally comes down to the individual who is going to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Do the right thing I mean, earlier in your program, we were speaking to a pediatrician who was talking about child safety and remembering that children, as well as our elderly, are vulnerable populations. What we do when we do the right thing for ourselves, we also do the right thing for them.
That's
and
true.
so be aware, put your take the opportunities and put yourself out to know what you need to know for your own safety and for the vulnerable ones around
Very
you.
good. Thanks very much, Mrs. Baptist. Ms. Spencer?
Again, thank you for having me. This is definitely out of my comfort zone, but I do
Nah,
look
you don't
forward.
you don't look uncomfortable at all in the studio, so don't tell nobody that.
Oh.
Look bossy right now.
Mrs. Baptiste knows.
Well, I
But
don't.
yes, thank you again.
Well, I don't know you.
Yes. I do look forward to speaking maybe next year. Who knows?
No,
But I
no,
would
long before
No,
next year.
that's a little far away.
Maybe next month.
But yes, I would like to the viewers, the 4 things I would like you to take away when it comes to food safety is just to remember: clean, cross contamination, cook and chill. With clean, ensure that when you're cooking, you're preparing food in hygienic conditions, free of contamination. For cross contamination, separate raw foods and cooked foods. When you're cooking, cook to the right temperatures to kill all pathogens. And for chill, make sure that you store perishable food at the right temperature.
Very good. And once again, I just want to say thanks very much to our guests this evening, Ms. Kelvin Spencer. Thanks very much. I learned so much in this program in terms of where you presented the research that you did. Ms. Solange Baptist, I know you're capable, so don't even try that to tell me that you're uncomfortable on radio, because that wouldn't swing here.
No, that wasn't me. That's
Oh,
her.
okay, because I know that wouldn't swing with you.
I'm a child.
And
That's
thanks very much to Dwayne, our technician, who always
Thank you, Dwayne.
capable to help us. And of course to Dr. Claudine Richardson from the hospital, Mount St. John's Lester Bird Center, for giving us the information on child safety.